If you used a computer in the early 2000s, chances are you stared at a lush green landscape for minutes at a time. Of course, today that scenery instantly brings one thing to mind for millions of users: Microsoft's Windows XP operating system. After the 90s, Windows XP took personal computing to a whole new level. With its sleek design, low hardware requirements, and compatibility with older devices, it became one of the first and longest-lasting operating systems for many users. But like all tech products, its time eventually ran out, making way for what was supposed to be a much better system. And just like Windows XP, the system that came next was destined to be unforgettable, but with one key difference: it would be remembered with frustration. Despite being developed for years and showcasing some of the best technologies of its time, almost no one remembers Windows Vista fondly today. So, why did Windows Vista become one of the most disliked operating systems ever? Back in 2001, Microsoft was preparing to launch what would go down as one of the best operating systems in history, Windows XP. After milestone releases like Windows 95 and 98, Microsoft aimed to take things a step further, and it succeeded in August 2001 with the launch of XP. The OS introduced a fresh interface, new features, high compatibility, and smooth performance, earning it a place as one of Microsoft's greatest. But even before XP launched, Microsoft had already begun working on something even bigger. The code name for this new project was Longhorn, and its development had started about 5 months before XP was released. The plan was to roll it out by late 2003. Longhorn was supposed to be an interim operating system, a stepping stone to something greater. It would introduce a few new features, while the real innovations would come in its successor. But things didn't go as planned, and the project soon became chaotic. By 2003, development on Longhorn was underway. Leaks revealed that the most striking feature would be the new Plex interface. There were new animations, toolbars, and widgets. For the first time, a sidebar on the right side of the screen, called the Action Center, offered quick access to apps. Up until 2005, features continued to be added, but the system was far from stable. Meanwhile, Apple had released macOS Tiger, which already included many of the features Microsoft was working so hard to implement, like advanced file search and graphical enhancements with seamless performance and reliability. The release of Tiger put Microsoft in a panic. That's because Apple managed to deliver advanced file search, integrated graphics, and audio processing features with flawless performance and reliability in that release. Microsoft had planned to include those same features in Longhorn. However, the operating system consumed so many system resources that these features performed poorly. So for Microsoft to be competitive with its rival, it needed to do a lot more optimization and refinement. But instead, the company made a decision that would reset all of its progress. Microsoft halted the development of Longhorn because the project had lost its focus. According to the decision makers, the development process had become highly disorganized. Features were being integrated into the system without understanding their marketing relevance, and the process was moving forward without a clear vision. When performance issues were added to the mix, Microsoft decided to start over from scratch. In 2005, Microsoft not only dropped the existing development, but also the name Longhorn. From the ground up, they began again, this time under a new name, Windows Vista. The development process of Windows Vista was extremely troubled. The journey that began with Longhorn was delayed due to various issues and eventually had to be reset. Although many features were dropped and the project continued under the name Vista, the development process still wasn't smooth. Despite the difficult process, Windows Vista, developed by over 2,000 programmers and containing 50 million lines of code, was released to users worldwide on January 30th, 2007. Windows Vista was introduced with a completely redesigned interface and a structure focused on high-level security. The brand new theme called Aero gave the operating system a whole new look. Window previews, transparency effects, and many of the animations and themes we use today were introduced to users for the first time with Vista. On the other hand, with its strong security measures and powerful encryption, Windows Vista aimed to eliminate the vulnerabilities experienced in XP and help restore Microsoft's image as a secure platform. With enhanced features such as more digital content interaction via Windows Media Center, DVD Maker tools, and improvements from sound systems to network connections, Windows Vista became Microsoft's most expensive and most feature-rich operating system to date. Windows Vista managed to sell 20 million copies in its first month after launch. This was a significant leap compared to the sales of previous operating systems. Of course, the fact that partner PC manufacturers included Windows Vista on their new machines contributed to its rapid spread. However, some users who started using Windows Vista began complaining about certain issues after a while. While Vista's rapid launch was fueled by eager PC users' curiosity, the excitement steadily declined as people spent more time with the OS. Many users who installed the new operating system began to face serious performance problems. The biggest criticism directed at Windows Vista was undoubtedly its overall poor performance. The system was so sluggish that users often couldn't even complete basic tasks and had to forcefully shut down and restart their computers. The main reason for this was that the operating system contained over 50 million lines of code. Such a large amount of code led to software bloat. Windows XP had around 25 million lines of code, while Windows 7 had around 40 million. So just imagine, while you're using your PC, millions of lines of code are trying to execute hundreds of tasks in the background. If your computer isn't powerful enough, it collapses under the load, resulting in heavy processing consequences. Windows Vista became a patience-testing operating system for its users. Even simple tasks like copying files or browsing the web created heavy system loads in Vista. Users couldn't get even half the performance they had on XP with the same computer when using Vista. In fact, Windows Vista was already a system that demanded much more in terms of hardware. Compared to its predecessor, Windows XP, Vista required 1 GB of RAM, a 1 GHz processor, and at least a 64 MB graphics card. By contrast, Windows XP could run with just 64 MB of RAM and a 233 MHz processor. Even though Vista was an advanced operating system, the jump in system requirements was far beyond what it should have been. Because at the time Vista was released, 75% of computers worldwide were still running Windows XP. To replace such a widely used OS, it was necessary to match its hardware requirements to existing systems, but unfortunately, the hardware Vista needed wasn't even found in many of the newest PCs. As a result, upgrading millions of computers without issues was nearly impossible. Windows Vista was also problematic for users who were able to upgrade, because Vista had serious compatibility problems. At the time, Microsoft had claimed that all existing hardware would be supported and hardware manufacturers would provide support for Vista. In fact, almost every product manufactured at that time was labeled as Vista Ready. However, most of these products were not actually compatible with Vista. Either the necessary drivers were missing, or the devices that had drivers didn't function properly. Computers with older hardware and enterprise systems were struggling hard with these compatibility issues. Even standard users had trouble getting basic peripherals to work with Vista. As a result, people were hesitant to ruin their stable Windows experience by switching to Vista. Windows Vista had truly become a bad operating system. In addition to all these performance and compatibility issues, there was another major problem that drove users crazy: User Account Control (UAC). User Account Control was developed to take the system's security one step further. According to this feature, the system would prompt the user for permission anytime a software-related change was about to happen. This permission had to be granted by the account with administrator rights. But in Vista, the permission system was so intrusive that it constantly asked for approval even for basic actions like installing or removing apps, launching programs, copying or deleting files. Imagine trying to delete or copy a file, and suddenly your screen dims with a message asking, "Are you sure you want to do this?" This became such a widespread complaint that Apple mocked it directly in ads promoting their own operating system.
Hello, I'm a Mac. Mac is issued a salutation, cancel or allow.
Allow, and I'm a PC.
You're returning Mac salutation, cancel or allow?
Allow.
Okay, what gives? Mac is asking a question, cancel or allow?
Allow. He's part of Vista, my new operating system. PCs have a lot of security problems, so he asked me to authorize pretty much anything I do.
You're pointing out Vista's flaws, cancel or allow?
Allow. I could turn him off, but then he wouldn't give me any warnings at all, and that would defeat the purpose, so.
You are coming to a sad realization, cancel or allow?
allow.
All of these issues drove users away from Windows Vista. People quickly reverted back to Windows XP after initially installing Vista with great excitement and enthusiasm. The shift was so dramatic that Microsoft delayed ending sales of Windows XP multiple times, even though they had announced it would stop in 2008 and continued selling it until just before the launch of Windows 7. Microsoft released 2 major Service Pack updates in an attempt to save Windows Vista. Although these updates slightly improved the OS, users did not give Vista another chance. Accepting the situation, Microsoft abandoned efforts to save Vista and accelerated work on a better OS, eventually releasing Windows 7, an operating system that made users say, "Now this is it." As for Windows Vista, it faded into the dark pages of history after 10 years of official support. Although Vista had a bad reputation, it laid the foundation for the operating systems we use today. Features like advanced file search, the Aero visual interface, and enhanced security all entered our lives with Windows Vista. But despite all these features, Windows Vista failed to become a successful operating system due to performance and compatibility issues. Yet Vista's failure turned both its predecessor, Windows XP, and its successor, Windows 7, into legends. Still, because it was my first love, Windows Vista will always hold a special place in my heart. So what do you think about Vista? Let's talk in the comments. And that's the end of another video. If you liked it, please support the channel by subscribing. See you in the next video. Take care and goodbye.